Are you a supplier to the UK poultry sector? Poultry Network's new supplier directory is launching to help farmers and producers find the companies they need, quickly and easily. The online directory goes live on June 30th, giving suppliers a searchable year-round profile, while the printed 2026/27 edition will be published at the beginning of September and posted directly to more than 2,000 UK poultry farms. For bookings made in June, suppliers can secure inclusion in the printed version for just £495. It's a simple way to put your business in front of the poultry sector when they're looking for products, services and support. Visit poultry.network/business-directory to book your listing today.
Hello and welcome back to the Poultry Network podcast. I'm Tom Woolman.
And I'm Tom Willings.
Well, this week, Tom, have I got a treat for you? Because you know I was complaining last week that we'd just been talking eggs. Eggs. We've actually got someone to talk to today about broiler production. I'm so relieved.
You look excited. I look relaxed because I'm not going to have to do a great deal of work in this episode. So that makes me very happy. Albeit I'm equally likely to sound like a complete fool. So I should get that out there immediately. You're the expert in this conversation, not me. Looking forward to learning more about broilers.
Yeah, so the guest today is Harrison Davies from Aviagen, who's one of the technical managers for Aviagen, spends his time travelling across the UK and I believe some of the other Scandinavian countries as well, advising farmers on how to get the most out of the Ross 308 product. Yes, so I've known Harrison for a while. I knew him when he was at Gafor, and yeah, our paths have crossed at many points, and I think now he's probably about 18 months, I think, into this role with Aviagen. So he's got a big old task, I know, with the pig and poultry fair. I'm sure that he must be exhausted at this stage, because to be honest, that is probably one of the busiest stands at the fair whenever you go, and he won't have a chance to sit down and stop talking.
They've got the best gift, so I'll throw it into the conversation now that if you didn't go to the Aviagen stand at the show, you missed out. Let's buckle up and get into the conversation with Harrison.
Well, I'm very pleased to welcome Harrison Davies from Aviagen to the podcast. Welcome, Harrison.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation for this opportunity.
Yeah, well, maybe you could just start off by talking a little bit about yourself, about your role. What have you done in the past? What's your pedigree, so to speak? Tell us a bit more.
It's a long list, but I've kind of shorten it down.
You can leave out any of the dodgy bits. Just talk about the good bits.
So I've always been in poultry with my father. He's always been a broiler manager. He's worked across the UK with different companies and in the independent side as well. So I kind of started with that, and then I basically moved on to see how do we get these broilers? What affects these broilers that we're getting? So basically I moved on to the parent stock, which I did a bit of laying and rearing. And then from there I moved on back to broilers on the processing side for 5 years. And then I eventually moved on to Aviagen.
Oh. So how long is it that you've been with Aviagen now?
So just over a year. So I started last February.
Good. The reason we've got you here today, Harrison, is that we are talking about a new performance club for the Ross 308, which is the 505 club. It was the 470 club previously, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But performance has continued to improve in recent times, and so the bar is getting raised again.
Yes, it is. We only had last year that we brought in the 470, and then we kind of realised that farmers were performing very well, so we had to up that kind of number just so that we can show that those best performers are getting what they deserve.
Can I come in here just as the non-broiler man and ask a naive question? What are we talking about here with 470s and 505s? What does the number mean?
Yeah, so we abbreviate to EPEF because it's quite winded, but it's a European Production Efficiency Factor, and basically it's a single number that shows how well you've done within your crop, your broiler crop. And then basically you have an equation which you can work out, and I usually split it into 3 sections, which is basically, did the birds stay healthy, which is your livability? Did your birds grow well, so that you look at your average daily gain? And then that goes onto your feed efficiency, which your feed conversion ratio, and then that kind of in line with your gut health as well, so good welfare with the bird. And then this is using an equation, so you have your livability times your live weight times 100 brackets. Then you divide that by age and FCR, and that will give you this one number that you basically can see how well you've done.
A brilliant way to benchmark all kinds of farms.
And I think the point here is that it's benchmarking biological performance, I suppose, if we can call it that. Obviously, farmers are quite used to comparing their financial performance in terms of their margin per metre squared per week and what they're making there. But really, this is a way that you can compare the performance of the birds and how well the birds are growing if people are even growing for different processors and or even in different countries, I guess, Harrison. You can.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. We're here we are in the UK. Is this a measure that applies everywhere in the world? And in fact, are other countries using exactly the same statistic? And how do we compare?
Yeah, so the EPF is obviously it's European, but they do measure it as well globally. Some countries may not because depends on their FCR and everything like that. They don't actually record, but yeah, it's a global thing to measure how well your bird has grown.
And is it a 505 club in the rest of Europe, or is it still a 470 club, or how does it work?
No, so it depends on where you are. So UK is 505, but depending on where you are in the world, it'll be different. And what their 1% is, top growers.
So it seems to me to be quite an interesting timeline, Harrison, in that you joined Aviagen just as the 470 club was kicking off. And in a remarkably short space of time, the performance of UK broiler growers has leapt up again to this 505, which is a big 35 points of EPEF.
Yeah.
What's the chat at Aviagen at the moment in terms of why this lift has suddenly happened, in terms of what the bird can do? Presumably, it's not all down to you, although I'm sure you've had a steady hand in it. What are your thoughts in terms of why we've seen these changes in recent times?
So I would say the main thing is obviously when you look at the birds themselves, and we see, especially in the UK, obviously going to this 30 kilograms, which we have seen a little bit of an uplift because of that. But when we have the company still growing at 38, they're still seeing this uplift in performance as well. So the reason why I say we see similar people come into these events, and I will put it down to their mindset. So they're always consistent. So they'll always take what that bird is doing, because obviously the bird changes time and again. So these farmers are actually listening, looking at the bird and seeing and that's what happens. They are consistently looking at the bird and how the bird wants everything, and then they do that.
And are these improvements being seen in other countries, or is the UK a little bit of a special case?
I think in the last year, probably the UK has climbed up a little bit more than everybody else. But overall, globally, yes, performance is getting better.
Could you going back to the focus on management and the farmers themselves sort of making the difference, as you were just explaining, Harrison? Could you point to any sort of specific activities or changes, influences that those best farmers, that top 1%, are actually doing? If you were kind of knowledge sharing on behalf of Aviagen to get the rest of the 99% up to the same level as the top one, what would your top tips be?
So when we look at the top farmers achieving these numbers, it comes back to that consistency. So just delivering the basics. It's just basics. So
feed, water, ventilation, litter.
The one main thing that we'll always focus on is brooding. That first 7 days is probably the most important out of everything, because once you've got that 7 days correct, it's kind of a stepping stone for that bird as it's developed very well to carry on. And it's also, like I said before, with the behavior of the bird. So following how the bird is acting. So if there's any changes within the bird, so you're changing ventilation, you're changing temperature, you're keeping on top of your litter management, and then supporting that bird health and welfare as you're going.
I'm in my kind of day job quite focused on data. And we see more and more sheds with sort of very clever integrated systems and often compartmentalized within a house into lots of different zones. How big a role do you feel that sort of technological advance plays on getting the best results? Is there a strong correlation in modernity and IT and performance, or is it a bit more the old ways and simple stockmanship of eyes and ears and nose being the key weapons?
So obviously time has gone on and more technology is coming out, and we always say that, because even the team at Aviagen, we use these technology, but we just class them as tools. So we use them to help us for what we can't see. So if that's air movement, temperature, everything else. So, but when it comes down to actually the welfare and the performance of the bird, it comes down to stockmanship. It always has. And making sure that bird is healthy.
And could I ask a little bit about stocking density? And that's been something that people in the sector have been talking about a lot over the past couple of years, because it's been a big change with the majority of people who are on retail contracts moving to 30 kilos, while red tractor production remains at 38 kilos. So you've got a little bit of a split in terms of performance. What are the trends that you're seeing? I mean, how big are the differences between 38 and 30 kilos in terms of what you're seeing? Obviously, we are seeing some benefits in terms of performance from the birds being lower stocks, but as you've alluded to, it's not the whole package. It's a bit more complicated than that. What's your overview of the differences between the two management systems and what people need to do really well in both of those to succeed?
Yeah, so when it came down to that stocking density going down to 30, obviously we did see an uprise on performance. But then farmers still on that 38 kilogram, they're still achieving that high EPEF. And I've recently seen one on 38 kilogram that just got over 500. So yes, stocking will help, but also what I see is from the biggest gains is executing those basics very well. Yes, when you drop stocking, you will change little things, so like ventilation. But what I would say is temperature is temperature. So I wouldn't be changing your temperatures higher. So that I will always go down to basics. If you're following what that bird wants, then it will do good for you.
Could we just pick up on that point that you made about ventilation? And I know it's something that you and I have spoken about at various points in the past. What do you think people need to be really aware of when they're moving from 38 kilos to 30 kilos when it comes to ventilation?
The one thing I said, obviously watching the bird behaviour, but we're downstocking around 20%. You are going to need to look at your ventilation, as in you might be over ventilating if you haven't changed. But I do see a lot of people before going to the 30 kilograms, they were probably under ventilating then. So sometimes you might not actually need the change.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your ventilation, is not have too much air going through those birds, causing basically a draft and maybe chilling your birds, especially on your brooding side.
And in terms of the dynamics, I guess, of the sector and the concern of moving to a lower stocking density would be that we would be restricting the amount of poultry meat which is produced. This is actually quite good news, isn't it? Because if we've had an uplift in performance of 35 points of EPEF, what that means is actually we are able to we are delivering more poultry meat from the same footprint, and some of that might be down to turnaround times and being able to potentially get more crops in a year, or it might be down to FCR and being able to get more from less when it comes to resources. I guess my view would be that it certainly puts the UK in a good place and has allowed the market to continue to function despite the pressures that have gone on in terms of reducing that stocking density and having the race for space. I don't know what your view on that is.
Well, yes, simple answer. Yeah, I do believe, obviously, when we've gone to that 30 kilograms and the performance has gone up, where that meat, obviously the weight of the bird, the 30 kilograms has helped that performance to rise to basically help that meat yield. So crops per year, probably not, but the actual weight going into factory, yes.
Ben? I was going to ask, going back to the 30 kilos versus 38, if we've seen an uptick in EPEF, is that being driven by any single one of the measures that form that part of the calculation, or is it a combination of all aspects? So is it livability? Is it gains in FCR? Is it gains in daily live weight? What's the driver that's underpinning the mathematical performance, if you like?
FCR and average daily gain I would say is the main lifters of this performance.
And in terms of looking to the future, I know that people from Aviagen are always getting asked this question, but what's coming down the line? What's coming over the next couple of years? Are we going to see this performance trend continue? I know certainly from some of the presentations that I've seen, the technology which Aviagen has got access to now, which allows them to balance breeding outcomes, which means that they're not just focusing on one trait, they're not just focusing on broiler traits, they're able to balance broiler and breeder traits, is allowing them to sustain performance increases both on the broiler and on the breeder. But it's quite amazing to look at how much performance has improved, and I'm really not sure whether things will continue. I don't know. What's your view?
Well, obviously, genetics always sets that potential of what that bird can do. But then it's the stockmanship when you put them on farm that actually determines how that potential is achieved. So when we advance in the breeding and performance, achieving those top end results relies on that consistent management. And then I'll always go back to it is getting that brooding right, always. And then obviously that determines how that bird ends up, how that bird achieves that performance. And what we usually say is we call it a farmer's sixth sense, where these farmers are seeing it before things happen.
And you made the really interesting point there about stockmanship, because one of the other factors that people always talk about as a pressure on the industry is availability of skilled labour, of skilled managers, being able to manage birds. So potentially that what you're saying is that could be just as much of a threat to performance continuing as whatever the genetics of the bird is going to be doing. It's, are we going to have enough people that know what they're looking at and are able to, as you say, empathise with the bird and give them what they need before the birds even realise that they need it?
Yeah, because the birds, when the bird changes, the best performance we see is that farmer following the bird. So as soon as that bird changes, that's the farmer needs to change as well. And I do see a lot of people kind of stuck in their ways, and it's the ones that are basically developing with that bird as well are the ones achieving these very high scores.
So if we were going to wrap up then, Harrison, what would you want producers to do next? How can they interact? How can they get involved? How can they join the 505 Club? I want this to encourage farmers to recognise what is possible, to focus on delivering those basics exceptionally well, and then I'll go back again, strong brooding, good environment control, and then just watch your birds. So don't always rely on your computers. The bird will tell you what it needs. And then that continuous improvement through that detail is what helps unlock that full potential of the bird. So that's the one thing I would say I want people to take away from this. And if they've had a result and it's 506, what should they do next?
If you go onto the Aviagen website, there is a link where you can put in all your details of what your farm performance has done, and it works out your EPEF score, and then that gets sent to us where we will approve it. And then next year, if you get it, there'll be an event on for you, our EPEF awards.
Yeah.
But if anybody has any concerns, you can approach any of the team. We're very, very friendly, and we'll give all the details you need. And
there's a gold award as well, isn't there? How's that?
Yes,
different?
there is. So if you're over 10% or you get 3 consecutive 505s in a row or above, then you'll be in the gold.
Yeah, and that's really the upper echelons of broiler management there. Yeah,
correct.
Well, all that remains for me to say is thank you, Harrison, for coming along and chatting to us today. And
thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll have plenty of eager beavers ready to join the club as and when their EPFs come in.
Looking forward to it.
Pick the bones out of that then, Tom. Interesting to hear from Harrison. He's obviously getting his feet under the table, as you said at the top, travelling the length and breadth of the country and further afield in his duties. What did you think of what he had to say?
Well, I think it's quite remarkable, really, what Aviagen have managed to achieve with the Ross 308, because the performance has been improving for a number of years, and that's not just on the broiler, that's on the breeder as well. Breeder performance really, I guess, over the last 10 years has improved massively, and that's why I referred to the fact that they're able to balance the breeding at the moment. It used to be, historically, I mean, this is going back before my time in the industry, but breeding companies would focus on one trait and they'd focus on broiler traits, and so the broiler would get very good and the breeder would be poorer, and then they'd go, right, we need more eggs, we need more hatchability, and they'd focus on the breeder, and then the broiler performance would start to waver. Whereas actually the role of technology now in terms of being able to balance and manage lots and lots of traits and keep them moving forward is, I think that's what we're seeing really in terms of returns, because Harrison alluded to the fact that the good farmers and consistent farmers are the ones that are always getting these awards, and he's right. And you can tell farms where you go, and when I visit, you see exactly the same thing. You know, you can see that consistency there. So really, it's the genetics, I think, that are doing amazing things. And considering, I mean, I will throw this in as well. There was a time in the past when Aviagen and Cobb had different market shares, and were almost 50-50 at various points. Cobb performance, unfortunately, hasn't kept up with the Ross, and that's the reason that over a period of time more and more people have moved over to the Ross. And really, Aviagen haven't really let up in terms of how, I think, the quality of the job that they're doing, and I think credit to them where it's due for sustaining what they've sustained.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm not experienced as you guys are in the broiler industry, but my question about technology, I thought his response was comforting as it was interesting, which is that you would. I paraphrase, and these were not Harrison's words. I understand that his answer was word perfect, but what I took from it was that you don't buy performance. It's not about technology. It's about the human element and the consistency of that rounded management and old-fashioned stockmanship that delivers the results. And I think there's a message in there for every producer of poultry that applies as much to the layer sector as it does to the meat sector. I guess that the human being is the thing that really makes the difference. Yes, you can have wizardry in IT and in data and connectivity, but they're little more than tools in the toolbox. It's the user operator that has to deploy them, and the user operator that makes the difference. I thought that was a good thing.
And that's one thing that we didn't necessarily touch on there, but I know that is another thing that Aviagen do to support professional development, I suppose, if I could call it that, in the sector, is they do have a next generation scholarship, both for breeders and for broilers, for people that are working at farm level, and they then have the opportunity to attend the Aviagen schools, and Aviagen run a number of schools throughout the year for people not just from the UK but all around the world that are buying their products. So they'll have a breeder school, they'll have a hatchery school, and they'll have a broiler school, where people will go for a whole week and just talk about chickens and how to get the most out of their chickens. And I've been on one, and it's a fantastic opportunity to go and sharpen up your knowledge, but also meet people that are producing the same bird as you, but all around the world. You have some quite fascinating conversations. So again, that sort of stuff is really useful in terms of developing people in the industry and giving them the skills they need to succeed.
Yeah, hats off to Aviagen for those sorts of schemes. I think you go back a year ago or so, and we welcomed Tim Burnside onto a Sustainability Hub podcast, so kind of before your time, before this format appeared, and he and I spoke at length about that. I'm sure if you'd like to go back and listen to it, you'll find it online via the Poultry Network feed, and of course it goes without saying that there's plenty of other episodes to rifle through as well. If you're interested in more to do with broilers, then it's not going to be a swift return to eggs. We've got more episodes on the meat side of things coming up in the near future as well. Brilliant. So do give us a follow and a subscribe.
Well, I'm sure that everyone who's listening to this, if they've been to the Pig and Poultry Fair, as I imagine that an awful lot of people have done, will have had a very busy week, and probably most people are entitled to do what I think I'm going to do at the moment, which is put the kettle on, make a cup of tea, have a biscuit, and put my feet up for a minute. So anyone listening to this that's done a lot of walking around and chatting, please give yourselves a a little bit of a rest and a chance to recover. You deserve it.
You rest up, Tom. Good to see you. See you next week.